Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Ask the Sensei for March 2022. I'm Tish Hicks. I'm the Master Sensei of the VO Dojo here in Burbank, California, and this is our free monthly Q&A. Myself, our Techno Sensei, home studio master, Dan Leonard, joins us each month, and every month we invite a wonderful voiceover colleague who has insights from different places in the business. And we are so excited to have Keythe Farley joining us today. Keythe is a multifaceted, knows the business from all the angles. So really excited to have you here. I think everyone knows Jeffrey, our dojo team member, who keeps everything flowing here. If you need anything, you can touch base with Jeffrey. So yeah, we'll introduce ourselves, and then Patty Tippo. Oh my gosh,
That's what I said.
Like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And we will take your questions. If you have questions, you can start putting in the chat. We'll have you put them in the chat, and then we'll have you unmute and speak your voice in the room, since it's, voiceover question and answer. So VO Dojo full training program here in Burbank. Dan, introduce yourself, please.
Why, thank you, Tish. I'm Dan Leonard, the home voiceover studio master. My area is helping you create a proper home voiceover studio, as opposed to going on Facebook and asking everybody what's the best microphone for voiceover and what's the best this, what's the best that, because it's all nonsense. We try to keep it simple, and so you can learn how to do this properly. And I have all the answers, and if I don't know the answer, I will tell you the right answer anyway.
Well, one of the things we've been saying at the dojo that I've just been like, yeah, that's it. If you know how to answer, if you know how to ask the right question, if you know how to ask good questions, you'll always be able to find the answer. So it's sort of fitting here, having a place to, practice asking questions, and then we'll give you the answers to the best of our knowledge. So yeah. Excellent. Keythe, introduce yourself. Some of you, I had the pleasure to do a Dojo 21 questions interview with Keythe. So we spent a little time together prior to this, and Keythe answered 21 questions. I think we did 22.
I think we did 22 because it was the 22nd of February, 2022 at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the extended dance mix. If you want to hear more of that, of what we talked about there, we'll share the link with that. But give us an overview, Keythe.
I work in voiceover. I have for years.
What?
I know, crazy, right? I started in 1997 as a voice director, not casting director, for RUGRATS. That led to RUGRATS video games, which led to opening a door to a world that didn't really exist. Voiceover in video games was not really being done much before the early 2000s. So in 2002, 2003, I started meeting folks at THQ, who led me to Sound Deluxe, and which became Formosa, and that sort of has branched out into Technicolor, which became Rocket Sound. And I've done casting, voice direction, and performance in nice little basketful of video games, and animation, commercials, audiobooks, and such. So, like you said, I sort of come at it from all the different angles.
Yeah, excellent. Yay. Well, so glad to have you here. And Keythe and I go way back to Actors Gang, where we know Patty from. So that's super cool to have. We're about to celebrate our 10-year anniversary, which will share you the invite with everybody. But it's been really cool to see all the lineages that come together with what we're doing. So yay. Well, all right. Let's see. What questions do we have? Let's see. Oh, everyone's calling from everywhere. This is awesome.
That's great.
Um, do do. Oh, that was just a technical question. Oh, here, Ekatrini. Let's take your question first.
Great, thank you.
Mm.
Keythe, this is a question for you. I love the 22 questions interview, so thank you for that. And you talked about a great story where you used to use your dad's cassette deck to record yourself and listen back. And I was curious, as you think about experiencing the world through your ears in an auditory way, are there things that you do to develop or activate those listening skills?
You know, I don't think I've ever done it consciously. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Like the fact that I understand and know the world through my ears, like probably many of you do, just means I'm responding to sound as much, if, and probably more than visual. I just remember the first time seeing like a movie that was in Dolby, like going into a movie theater, and I forget what movie it was. It was Kevin Costner, and he was riding a bike. It was like the mid '80s, and I went to this movie theater in Westwood because I'd heard it was good. And the movie starts with him like riding his bike alone, and you just hear the sound of the bike and maybe a little bit of music, and then all of a sudden it cuts to the scene and he's going up a mountainside, and the whole theater filled with sound, and I went out of my body in that moment. It was such a profound experience. So playing music has been part of it. Singing in choirs. I'm not a great part singer, so I'm listening to the dude who's singing next to me to get the tone. When I was in elementary school, I transferred from Long Beach, which had I was a beginner trombone player, to Sacramento, where these kids had been playing together for a year or two. And for the first year in band, I was listening to the guy next to me and trying to match his slide position because I had no idea what I was looking at on the page. So, I mean, all of those experiences of just, do I love sound because I listen well, or do I listen well because, I mean, it just all sort of comes together in me. So I always tell folks to, particularly if you want a career in voiceover, discovering where you fit is a huge part of it. And in order to do that, you have to be an active listener to animation, video games, commercials. I like golf, and I watch golf on the weekends. And the day that I realized, like, oh, my voice is like those voices on the golf, on PGA Tour, that luxury cars and investment banks and stuff like that were sort of where my voice fit. And then I would just sit on the couch and watch golf. And then when the commercials would come on, I would echo the commercials. And 2 years later, I was the voice of Scottrade that ran on the PGA Tour. And that was not something I was like, I'm going after Scottrade. No, it just happened because I was ready when the audition came up, because I'd been actively listening. So when you're playing video games, when you're watching cartoons, what you have to do, and you can make it fun. I mean, it is fun. That's one of the first assignments I give my students is like, watch cartoons.
Somebody's got to do it.
Tell your spouse you have to. It's an assignment. Play video games. It's an assignment.
And Dan, as a sound engineer, that's a great question, Ekachini, and really well answered, Keythe. As a sound engineer, what's your take on that? How can we all be developing our sense of hearing? And I think for me, it's really being able to notice nuances, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not one of those things you're going to learn overnight. You know, I've been doing this, since the 70s. There's a certain way things are supposed to sound. And then with the advent of digital audio and, during the 80s and into the 90s, the sound became a little bit more cleaner and, easier to produce. But it takes it's not like listening to music. It's because you're listening to one source at a time, and that's your voice. And as we always say, what's going to make your studio sound right? Everybody keeps asking for, what we call broadcast quality, which is basically an obsolete term because one, very little stuff is broadcast now. Everything's over the internet. The reason things sound like they do over broadcast, over radio or television, is not because of what you do in your studio. It's because of what they do at the transmitter to make it louder and all those other things. Your job is to very simply create a mono, properly modulated file. And what is it that makes it broadcast quality? As I like to say, it doesn't sound bad. And what is it that can make it sound bad? Anything that's not your voice, anything that distracts the listener from your voice. You only want to hear your voice and nothing else. You don't want a lot of reflection in the room you're in. You certainly do not want exterior noise, and you don't want any electronic noise. All of those things are physical. And people need to stop thinking about, I've got to get this thing or that thing to clean up this and do that. If you do it right up front, if you record properly using all the techniques that we try to teach you, it should sound right as you hit record and stop, and not have to do a whole lot to it. And that's really the key to making it sound right. And I have an acronym, WHISTLE, what it's supposed to sound like. And usually for those of us that have been doing it a long time, you'll listen for 5 seconds and go, oh God. I could play you something somebody sent me yesterday. It's like, oh, what is this person doing? And then, a little more further investigation, you hear it's like, well, they're in a pantry, they're shoved between two walls like this, and they sound like they're under a shelf. So it's things like that. And how do you learn to do that? It's by listening to stuff that is correct, not by listening to people's demos and stuff like that has all been processed. You need to hear what it sounds like up front from people who know how to do it properly.
One thing that we do as an exercise at the dojo is, I think it's inspired by an old Sesame Street segment, is just actually you can do a practice every day of take 30 seconds and sit in silence, like don't make any noise, and just notice the layers of sound you can tune into, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is if you're sitting in your kitchen, you ask yourself, does your refrigerator make noise?
Right.
You may not notice it.
Right. No, but that's why, like, just taking a little meditation of listening carefully to develop your ability to, like, oh wow, there's a sound under there. There's a sound under there, and the layers of it. So yeah, cool. Well, good opening question. Let's see, what do we have next, Jeffrey?
We have Heather Lynn Watt. Go ahead and unmute yourself and pose your question.
Hi, Keith. My question was for getting into character for any of your reads. Like, what do you personally do? And when you're coaching other people, what little tips do you suggest?
Well, I do a whole hour on character creation. So as far as tips and tricks go, it really is about the voice. And sometimes you want to play with pitch, placement, texture. But really that's to get to a voice, but to get to a character, you want to talk about who the character is. And what they're about. And so I sort of look at it from the physiology, the sociology, and the psychology of the character. You can get as granular with those details as you want. Excuse me. Because a character that's a bear is going to sound different from a character that's a fly. The physiology is is different. The king of the flies is going to speak differently than the worker fly. That's the sociological aspect. And the one that's the well-adjusted bear is going to be different from the bear who wants all the honey. So those will help you discover who the character is, and to dig in as deeply as you can into those questions of physiology, sociology, and psychology. And then you ask, where is the character? Who are you talking to? What do you want? And how does that make you feel? And that's the process of grabbing a character, putting that character in a scene, and playing that scene honestly. So all of those skills that go into that, to making choices that amp up what we at the Actors Gang call the states and stakes of the situation, always looking for the high stakes choice that's life and death, will put your character in an emotional state, happy, sad, angry, or afraid. And those are all huge things that are not easily unpacked in 5 minutes, but that's the gist.
Just do that.
That's the gist of acting, is know your voice, know the character, know the situations, know what you want, invest in it, and play it.
Yeah. Wow. It's so funny. I have a 19-year-old who's on the college journey, and we were teasing, like, okay, so you're covering all the ologies, right? You've got the ologies and the osophies, like you've got the sociology and the psychology and the philosophy. And I was like, but if you understand those things, you can get through, like, that's if you understand what people do, how they work, it's like, yeah. So that's brilliant. Yeah, that is something to put in your pocket. Thank you.
It's the building blocks.
It's the building blocks. Now go live that. Yay.
Right. It's like, I mean, I bring it back to sports a lot, like golf especially. Like, how do you hit a golf ball? Well, you stand at the golf ball, you put it between your feet, you want your arms to hang down from your chest, and you want to swing around your body without swaying too much, and then you want to make sure that club face hits nice and square. I mean, there are components to a golf swing. It's really that simple. Step up to the ball and hit it. But, you do it for 30 years and you just go like, why? It's so simple, but it's not easy. And that's part of the trick of acting as well. And voice acting in particular, because we don't have the face and gestures to help us along, or a costume, or a set, or a lighting.
Yeah.
It's actor focused. And so for me, you have to be a really good actor.
And being a really good actor is knowing yourself as a human, I think, and being able to go to all those places. So yeah. Awesome. Cool. Good questions, guys. What's next?
Chris Boogie Marcos, go ahead and pop your question.
Hello.
Hey.
April Sheets here too. Just wanted to know, Keythe, how your classes are usually formatted. Like, what does your class kind of entail, and how would one find information on how to join one of your classes? Yeah,
I have sort of suspended. I mean, you see the empty couch behind me. It's been this way for 2 years. So I've suspended in-person classes. Hopefully, God willing, we'll be able to start those up again soon. I do individual coaching because I haven't really figured a great way to do classwork, the sort of building blocks that we were just talking about. That's sort of the structure of the class, is starting with, where am I? Who am I talking to? What do I want? How does that make me feel? Then the second class is on character creation. Third class gets into combat barks and vocal effects. How do you attack, damages, leaping, landing, climbing, swimming, death of 1,000 different ways. And then we get into, letting you run a little bit for classes 4 and 5. it's a building block approach, and having human beings together in a room is a great way to sort of be able to point out what other people are doing and use other people by example in a way that I don't feel comfortable doing on Zoom. I do a lot of workshops on Zoom these days where it's individuals bringing in a piece that I can talk to you about real quick and then move on to the next person. But when we're really building that foundation, those fundamentals, it's really important to be in person. So if you want to get on the mailing list, you can reach me at kickassvo at gmail.com, or go to keythefarley.com, which is in the chat, and you can grab the email address and contact information there.
Oh, cool. Excellent. And work with Keythe. He's awesome. Let's see. Shall I ask this question, Jeffrey? The next question from Shadow?
Yeah. Go for it, Tish.
Okay. So this is a really interesting question. And Shadow requested for someone else to speak it, interestingly enough. So the question is, any advice for someone who wants to become a voice actor, but has serious anxiety and stage fright? Well, I think, like, for me to answer first, and then I'd love to hear what you guys think. The main, like, our mission at the dojo, the purpose of the dojo, our goal is really to align people with the power and possibility of their voice. The way the dojo is structured, it's through the vehicle of voiceover. But more importantly is, how do you align yourself? So I would say, Shadow, first of all, honor that there's some spark that you feel, right? That there's some impulse, and then what happens with the stage fright? What makes you anxious? What about putting your voice into the world makes you nervous or stops you? I totally understand, because I was a trained opera singer and kind of had singing anorexia. So, like, in retrospect, I was like, oh wow, I kind of had singing. So a lot of what we do at the dojo is based on this internal thing. So I would say, first of all, well, we can have a whole discussion about who's your inner critic and what's stopping you, right? But honor that spark, and then give yourself permission to explore, and find the source of the dose. Like, ask who your inner critic is, right? Who your inner critic is. Ask them who they are, what their issue is, and what you can take from that, and then ask them to leave when you're coming to play, and see what happens. So what do you guys think? What are your thoughts, Keythe and Dan? Either about just I mean, I think it goes back to the psychology, the physiology, and the sociology of yourself. But how would you guys approach that question?
Well, it's interesting because I've just finished reading Stella Adler's book, The Art of Acting, and she talks about stage fright in the book, and says that the way you combat stage fright is by immersing yourself in the material, is by immersing yourself in the situation at hand, immersing yourself, getting out of you and into the world of the character. And I think that's great advice. And I think everything you said, Tish, about the inner critic, that voice that keeps jumping up and talking to you while you're trying to be in a situation with another character, is a great practice too, to sort of say, like, hey, it's not your time. And I find that dividing my time in the booth between acting and commenting helps with that. That I am performing, and then I pick up my headphones and I put them on, and I become the listener or the director. And then when I'm ready to do another take, I take the headphones off and I set them down and I perform. So that's a trick that I use, which is literally putting on another hat.
Mm.
But that's a challenge we all deal with. And like I said, Stella Adler suggests that it's a matter of committing fully to the scene that you're playing, to the situation at hand, and that will free you from that idea of being looked at by anybody because you're so immersed in the world that you're playing.
Yeah, and one other thing comes up. We talk about the rules of voiceover, and one of them is share your truth, or trust your voice and share your truth is the first one. Trust your voice is the second one. And there's something inherently vulnerable about sharing your truth. So just trusting that if you're feeling that little bit like, that's probably a good thing, because you're probably sharing something that is truthful. Like, how do you let that be and know that it's okay, and then get used to it, right? Yeah. What are your thoughts, Dan?
Well, I keep thinking, how could someone get stage fright in voiceover? I mean, who are you staring at except your microphone? I've never had stage fright. It's never been an issue for me because I just like, I like, I like performing, although I'm sure we've all had dreams when we're stepping out on stage and we're like, are we doing The Odd Couple or Richard III? Like, what show am I doing here? It all comes down to practice, and confidence in what you're doing, and not worrying about what other people think. If you're successful, if you're getting hired, if you are confident in what you're doing, it really shouldn't be an issue. You should be able to just be yourself, hit record, and do what you do, and not worry about, well, what are they going to think? When you first start auditioning, and there's a lot of that going, oh, what are they going to do? Am I doing it wrong? Am I doing it wrong? Just be you, follow the directions, and practice being able to follow the directions, and then just be confident in what you do. Unless somebody says, you're not doing this right, you need to be doing this, or you need to be doing that. Be your own best critic by just trusting yourself. And that way you don't have to, worry about it. There should be no need for stage fright with voice acting. It's like, you can't see the audience, that sort of thing. Just be you and be the copy, and not be what you think other people want you to be.
And I think I just find a place where you can relax and be safe and play at first. So there's no pressure. One of the first things we say here is like, nobody cares if you do this or not. So it's okay. like no, seriously, like in the best of, really, like, everything will be fine if you don't do this. So there's a reason why you want to do it. And if you want to do it, you can find, you can figure out the way to do it. So that's helpful. Happy to talk more, Shadow, because the thing that you brought up is kind of at the heart of how we work at the dojo. So super brave of you to ask that question too. So thank you. And we'll look forward to hearing your voice in the room when it feels comfortable. Yay. Great job, guys. What's next, Jeffrey?
I've got a question from Eric, Nepom or Napalm, about training in. Yeah.
Yes, Nepom.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Unless he's really mad and destroys everything, then.
Just so awful. Good to see you, Keith. This is a question for everyone, actually. There's a trend in voiceover right now, casting-wise, that seems like there's a lot of, I want to cast you for your voice, and you don't get to play around with it as much. Do you see this as a trend as well? And what are your experience, opinions, the whole works on all that? And is it worth, if you've got the ability to have multiple voices, to have that on your reel, or is it worth really just focusing on one or two these days?
What do you think, guys? Take it away.
It's an instrument. Your voice is an instrument. How do you play it? I think it's good to understand the trends in voiceover, but what if the trend shifts? What if tomorrow they want you to sound completely and utterly unlike yourself? Can you adapt in that way. I always start with the natural speaking voice. I start there. That's the building block. And I always tell the story about when I was waiting tables back in the day, and I would come home from work and my voice would be shot. And I realized one night that when I was stepping up to the table side, I was going like, "Hey, how you guys doing? Can I get you a cocktail or a glass of wine?" And everything was this pitched up, friendly dude voice that was way outside my natural speaking voice. And that I was wearing myself out on the floor for 6 hours a night in a noisy restaurant. And so the next night I sort of tried to settle back down into this natural speaking voice and was able to do it for the evening and come home and hang out with friends and enjoy my evening and not have to have that vocal recovery time. I meet actors. I've been meeting more and more actors who are, I don't really want to do anything with my voice. I don't really want to play anything. I really want to sort of just focus on, you listen to Yuri Lowenthal. You listen to some of the great actors who aren't doing crazy vocal things. And then you meet a Charlie Adler and you meet actors who are extremely versatile with their voices. Right? Keythe Farley on RUGRATS, who played Phil, Lil, and their mom. In real time, shifting between those three characters effortlessly. And you start to understand that there's a huge world out there, and that there's work for folks. And it does, in certain aspects of the industry, seem like we're moving towards a more straight ahead, we want you type of feel. But SpongeBob, are still making SpongeBob. There are still shows, and Ratchet and Clank it was a great game, and those voices are very broad and cartoony and don't sound that way at all. So find your niche, and it's good to follow the trends. It's smart to be up on what's going on. It's a really smart question. So yeah, it kinda, but everything changes. It's always changing all the time, and you have an instrument, so it's good to play on the low end of the piano. I find I just kind of stick to the middle. It's like, oh no, wait, there's some keys up here that I can play, even though most of the time when you're playing, you're sort of going to live in that low C to high C vocal range, or maybe you want to move away from that so that your voice can get in there. It's good to be able to play the whole piano.
Yeah. Your piano, your whole piano.
Sure.
That's yeah. What are your thoughts, Dan?
It's, I don't do a whole lot of character stuff. I mean, I do, and I know how to do it. It depends on what it is you're doing, and how comfortable you are with, the auditions you get. It says you're this, you're that. Follow the specs, create your character, and do that. But is it necessary to, I mean, you want to have a lot of different, a lot of variety. That's what's going to make you sound different. The fact of the matter is we all sound different. We're all snowflakes. So again, it comes back to what I was saying before, that just be confident in your own voice and learn your own voice. They say, what is it that people who are, impressionists and impersonators do? They know their own voice really, really well. And from there, they can make the variations to the, like take it up here or take it down there or whatever, but know your own voice. So you understand what range you have, and, and constantly practice stretching it to see where you can go with it. It's really primarily relevant only in animation and gaming, because I don't find this so much in e-learning as, or in but you might find it in audiobook narration if you're really into that. If you're doing fiction, man, you got to change characters sometimes within 2 sentences, and you've got to practice that sort of thing, being able to go from one to the other. But it depends on what type of niche, as Keythe was saying, you want to follow. What are you getting hired for? Find out what you're best at. Practice all the other things. learn what it is, what your piano does, and have that in your toolkit to ready to use it. They always say that, what is it that the successful people have done? When the opportunity came, they were ready, they were prepared, and they were able to deliver when the opportunity came. So that's really where the practice and the study comes in, to really be knowing yourself and knowing where you can go at any one time like that. And that doesn't happen overnight either.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that we look at, like when we're in the place of self-exploration that becomes your demo preparation, right? Really exploring. We talk about exploring the different facets of you, right? So who are you? So it's your voice, but in different facets of you, like, and you can do an exercise of who are you, running, like what are you wearing almost, and who are you when you're wearing that? Like, who are you when you're stepping butt naked out of the shower? Who are you when you're getting dressed to go to the Academy Awards, right? And sort of in between there, who are you in your flannel shirt? Who are you in your pressed khakis and your button down and pressed khakis? Who are you? Like, so, and then you're going to have a different version of that, right? Because so I think it's really exploring the facets of yourself. And the trend that I think you're noting is authenticity. This I guess I am the management here, but the views expressed are not the views of management. Well, I guess it is. The world is so full of so much bullshit right now. How can we just, like, we want to feel that experience of someone telling you the truth, telling you like it is, right? That authentic experience of really just being someone talking to somebody else, right? So I think that's the trend. There's a trend toward being really naturalistic rather than I'm an authority and I'm going to tell you what's what, right? So yeah, it's and then know your piano, know the orchestra, find the orchestra in your voice too. And there's no, is it worth having a multitude of voices? If you have a multitude of voices, yes, that's fantastic. If you don't, then don't worry about it. Find the variety. You guys know Neil Kaplan. Neil Kaplan is a wonderful colleague of ours, and he has a great saying. You may have you may have a range from X to Z, but what can you do in that? Like, think about, he shares the story of James Earl Jones, right? What his range does is from here, but he's been iconic characters in different facets of himself within the range of his voice, right? And yeah, and authentically so. So yeah, cool. Good question. Is that helpful, Eric? Where'd he go? He left. Oh my God.
Bored him to tears.
We talked so long. No, there he is.
Sorry, I'm doing a little editing at the moment while also listening. Yeah, no, it's wonderful.
Good. Good. Excellent. Do we want to ask this question from Jim out loud, Dan? Do you want to answer the mono question?
Oh,
or actually,
I see that there's one from Bill Valley. I feel like it was. Okay. I'm looking at it now, and I'm sorry, Bill. It looks very similar to that last question. Is that one that you felt like you got a sufficient answer in answering the last question, or if you have a different question?
Is there another nuance of it? Yeah, while we're in there. Bill Valley, there you are.
Yeah, hi. I think I got a good answer, although I'm asking it from a perspective of someone who's plotting their career and saying, well, do you really work towards being really good at one thing, or do you try to spread out your talents and go from there?
I say get your low-hanging fruit, start making money, and then build from there. I think building your career, I think you have a foundation. Like if you know you're like, and you have just put together an awesome commercial demo, right? So that's going to be like a foundation. And then what's your next logical thing? where like, oh, like Keith said, oh, I should be doing golf ads. Well, let's get that going. Where's the next logical thing? And then just understand that you'll keep on building on your what opens up. I think it's a combination of where do you want to go, what makes sense, what interests you, right? Because you could have a great voice for audiobooks, and that might make you want to blow your brains out, right? Your voice could be perfect for it, but do you like it? And then understand that it's going to evolve and open up, and you'll find the things where it fits. And there might be something that you want to do, like promo or animation, that might take a little bit, might not be instantaneous that the door is open, but walking down the trail. So I think it's for me, how do you know what you want, and then how do you what makes sense, like how can you be of service, right, most impactfully? So go for the low-hanging fruit where you can get the most return first, get your business going, and take it from there. What are your thoughts on this, guys?
I think that's great advice.
Yeah. You have to, I mean, you have to get yourself into a situation where you can get access to auditions, whether it be a pay to play, a good one, and exposing yourself to all the different types of material that are out there and finding your niche that way, as opposed to trying to guess, well, I think I might be good at this, or I might be, I always thought I would be good at certain things. And then they started hiring me for other stuff. So so it's like, well, I might as well exploit that if they're going to continue to hire me for that. So, that's what I did. But, you always practice to see what else you can stretch into. And, sometimes it's that little voice in your head that says, this one's for me. I know exactly how to approach it. And then it's like, oh, I am not this person. I can try and stretch to do it, but there's probably somebody else out there that's going to outperform me and do this. And I've got other auditions to do. You want to at least have a crack at a high percentage of getting stuff.
Yeah, I think that's something to, like, you could be like Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream. I'll play all the parts, but there's going to be parts that you're better for than not. So you don't have to play all the parts, or you may be really freaking good and be able to. So I think there needs to be awareness of building a voiceover career now. That's kind of different when I started, when Keythe started, when Dan started. But I think building a diversified portfolio with a lot of different revenue streams is really the name of the game now, if you can, right? Especially during the pandemic, people who've just been in LA, just been doing union work, just been doing this, things start shifting. You're like, wait a minute, what money am I leaving on the table only working in this modality? What else is there? So just looking at it as possibility and building upon it. And then what Dan's, you don't have to be, is it competitive? Is what you're putting out there competitive? And you can find out when people start hiring you, right? Good. So that's actually taking that having a variety of sounds, and then you just took it one next step of how do you activate that into building your career. So I think one of the things we do at the dojo is just encourage you to look at this. We're training you to have a sustained, successful career. So we don't think of it like, it's got to happen right now, this second. Yes, we want it to happen we want you to be as prepared so it can happen as fluidly and swiftly as possible. And also, this is what you're going to be doing for a while. So how do you keep that concentration and allow it to unfold? That makes sense? Yeah.
Definitely. Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. All right.
All right. And so Jim, and the only reason I realize now, there was a question that Jim posed in the chat about mono, and Dan answered that in the chat as well. But Jim, I'd like you to ask your other question for Keythe, if you would like to pop in here.
All righty then.
Where are you? Oh, there you are, in the blue room.
In the blue room. Yeah, my question, I think he answered part of it already, but I've done some video game, like particularly the army ones, where there's a lot of screaming, a lot of shouting. And then I had another audition for a part of an evil voice where I had to talk like this. And I was just wondering, have you ever auditioned for something and then thought, gee, how am I going to keep this voice up for 4 hours?
Well,
Has that ever happened to you where you just regret it? Like, oh, I don't know if I could do this without drinking throat coat tea every 10 minutes.
I'd like you to meet Eruptor. This is a character I played in Skylanders, and he talks like this. And that's one that I can't do for very long, especially with the higher volume. And it's about knowing your voice and when you're done. That's one. The character that I played in Star Wars Squadrons, Ardo Barodai, who was sort of wanted kind of a Peter Falk kind of a thing, so I kind of just put the hand to the head, and then I was the voice of the multiplayer. So taking this voice that was in here and going, "The squadron's at your back," for 4 hours. And then the character I played in Asgard's Wrath, Rogenwald, was this huge... I walked into that session, and he was very large, and he's a dude like human size who's sitting on a ship, sort of heckling a fight between two gods. So he's, our size, and these characters that are fighting are 10 stories tall. So that session was 3.5 hours at this sort of large level up here. And I realized 20 minutes in, I thought there's no way I'm going to make it. There's just no way that I'm going to be able to do this for 3 hours. And I just was like, bring me water. And I found a placement for it where the throat was really loose and very open. The tension in here is your biggest enemy in those situations. But after about 25, 30 minutes, I started to feel like, okay, I'm comfortable at this level. I'm comfortable at this with this character. And I talked to the director after the session and said, wow, I feel like if I needed to, I could go to work right now and do a promo or a commercial if I had to. I'm tired because loud texture. But I think I could do it. He goes, well, sometimes it's like going for a run where you get, a quarter mile in, a half mile in, you just feel like you don't have anything in the tank. And then all of a sudden you hit your stride and you find that rhythm and you find that pace. And then you can find you can run for 3, 4, 5, 10 miles. And so with a character like Rogenwald, where I was very operatic, it was very open in the throat, really easy to keep that up. Still, you have to understand when you're going to add volume, when you're going to add texture or heavy aspiration to your voice, you're going to reduce the amount of time. It's like lifting weights. If you could do 20 reps at 20 pounds, but when you take that up to 50, you're going to do fewer reps before your muscles give out. So knowing your voice, understand what you can do, what you can't, stay in communication with your director, stay in communication with your engineer about what you can and can't do. Also understand your voice will repair itself. That if you have time to allow for, I had a session, that Peter Falky one where I had to scream. I found that one to be did a lot more damage, a lot faster, because it was less open and big like this. It was more in the throat. It was just the placement was about here. And after 2.5 hours, the director said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Honestly, I'm getting to the end of what I can do." You start to hear the cracks come through a little bit. It's just you don't have the control. I said, "Tell you what, if you gave me 20 minutes where I could just sit here and sip tea quietly, I could probably give you another half hour." And he goes, okay, great. We're bringing you back. No problem. So staying in communication like that. And we've been working really hard as performers, hand in hand with our union, to help producers understand that vocal stress is a thing. And that vocal damage is a thing, and that pushing yourself beyond that, just my voice is tired, to the place where people are tasting blood in the back of their throats, that's a bad sign. People passing out in sessions, that's not a good thing. People with vocal nodules that keep them from working for weeks at a time is bad. You don't want to develop those things. Hemorrhaging your vocal cords is devastating. It could take you out for the rest of your career. And nobody wants that. So the education that we've been able to do, thanks to SAG-AFTRA, has really helped everybody to understand that vocal stress is a thing, and nobody wants to be the director or the engineer or the development studio that knocks an actor and puts an actor in the hospital.
The way you just articulated that, Keythe, it's really, and this, this is where the approach was. It's safety. It's like in the same way that you would have handling a weapon on set, weapon safety. Like if you are putting yourself in a dangerous situation, it's health and safety, right? So you have to take care of yourself that way.
But you shouldn't be auditioning for any characters you can't feel like you can't do for 2 hours straight.
Right, taking that responsibility.
I mean, understand that too. Like if you're auditioning for a role in a video game of a soldier on the battlefield, you are going to be loud and intense the whole time you're there.
Right.
So if that's something that your voice is not up to, that you can't handle 2 hours of intense work like that, don't audition. Don't put yourself in the mix for that stuff.
Yeah.
There are plenty of other roles that aren't soldiers screaming on the battlefield.
Indeed. Well, we're coming to the top of the hour, and what we like to do is finish this portion, and then right at 11, just to honor your guys' time. And then if you want to stay around and have other questions, Jeffrey will break us into different breakout rooms. How you say breakout rooms. So
breakout room, we go.
Spend a little bit of time, a little bit more time, sort of BTS sort of thing. So if you have other questions, and I think we'll have time for one more. Before do, why don't we let people know, Dan, how do people get in touch with you?
Oh, it's real easy. Just go to homevoiceoverstudio.com. And you can find me there. You can contact me there. There's also my my specimen collection cup for $25. I will analyze your current audio and see what does it sound like and what does it need to improve, and more importantly, what's right with it. So.
And then can you tell us about VOBS too? Because that's
absolutely. Voiceover Body Shop. We're on every week with fresh material. At least we try to. 1 week we'll do an interview with somebody important like Keythe Farley, who's always an excellent guest. And then the second week, every other week, George Whittam, my co-host, and I do Tech Talk, and we just talk about voiceover tech in a way that everybody can understand, and we like to answer people's questions, and it's an hour that goes by like that. So
it is such a great resource. If you are not tuning into VOBS, you are missing out on a wealth of knowledge from 2 guys who really know their stuff. So I cannot say how much it has helped me in my career, and how grateful I am to Dan and George for everything I've gleaned from them.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like if you don't know sports, then hang out with people who are talking sports, and then you kind of are relaxed about it, right? Like, okay, yeah, cool. Totally. And Keythe, how does everyone keep in touch with you?
KeytheFarley.com. Most of the contact information I have is there. Like I said, I could put you on a mailing list. I do private coaching, demo production, all that good stuff right now. But classes, I feel, I hope, I pray, are coming back soon. So if you want to come over to the VO Lounge and occupy one of these 8 seats in my beautiful banquette, I would love to have you.
Yay. Good. And in terms of keeping in touch with the dojo, www.thevodojo.com for everything. We would love, well, let's see, there's a couple things coming up tonight. If you are in the, what is that called? Like down by the beaches. We are a partner. If you were here for Ask the Sensei last month, Philip Gilpin was here, the executive director of Catalyst Storytelling Institute. We are working in partnership with the Catalyst Storytelling Institute and Festival, think Sundance for episodic content. And there's a mixer tonight. So I think Jeffrey's going to share that. So if you wanted to come meet people who are creating content, and I think as voiceover artists, it behooves us to always be thinking like, what can we be making in addition to what our voices can be serving? And then we are celebrating our 10th anniversary on March 13th. And we'll put the link to the invitation there, but we would love to have you come join us. We'll be celebrating 10 years, reflecting back and looking forward. There'll be games and raffles and really just a lot of awesome VO people together. So be sure to do that and bring your friends. It's an open party celebration for everybody. Let's see, I guess we're right at time. I really wanted to get to Patty's question and
well, Tish, pretty much the whole crew has stuck with us. Should we just keep it all in here instead of going to breakout rooms, so we can just proceed?
Yeah, why don't we do that? A little extended dance mix. Does that sound right? Okay, cool. And if you got to roll, guys, this is all recorded. You can catch it on the end. So anyone who has to roll, let's do that. Well, why don't we go to Patty's question and then to the I think there was a tech question too.
Yeah, there was Eric. Eric had another really good one that's tech specific. So
well, let's get Patty's because Patty's is a really interesting, specific, genre oriented, like honing in. The question opens up lots of awareness. So Patty, hi. So
yes, hi you guys. No, great. This is so awesome. I just moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and I saw your faces come up on my Facebook that you put it on. I was like, oh, friends. I wasn't even sure what this was going to be. I was just excited to see you. Anyway, my question is this. I really have limited experience with voiceover. And there's one element that is a mystery to me. And maybe it's because there's not one normal situation. But when you do animation, let's say you were on a weekly animation show, do they show, is it like looping where you see the screen and you have to match the character? Because I was doing anime and they had just the circle for the mouth so that they could dub it in any language, which I thought was brilliant. But how do they do it normally? Do they have people come to the studio? Does everybody do it at home and just, I mean, I've had the situation where I've just given some lines and then they do what they want with it. But what's normal?
There are a couple approaches. When I worked at Klasky Csupo on RUGRATS and As Told by Ginger, they start with what they call the radio play. And Patty and I have done a radio play or two together. They start with the radio show. I mean, when I was working there as a production coordinator, and I would get these cassettes back in the day that said episode 301 radio show, and then the storyboard artists listen to that and create the storyboards from the performance. That's the Klasky Csupo approach. And then there's the Hanna-Barbera Cartoon Network approach, where the animator is more in control, and they will storyboard first, maybe even do an animatic, which is sort of it's a compilation of the storyboards, that they put together in the computer to sort of give a feel for what the show is going to be like before they fully animate it. And then sometimes you'll have that in the studio. So I can go, take a look at this image from page 347. That's what we're playing. So you can see that the character is afraid, or they're angry, or they're happy. And it's easy way to get to state work is to be like, that's what you're playing. So, and then anime is a completely finished cartoon that was done in another language that we're hired just to put the voices in for. With Final Fantasy 15, which I cast and directed, we were allowed to create the English language version of the show as if we were creating it from scratch. We weren't bound to performances that were recorded in Japanese. We were able to do it ourselves. Now, we had the audio as a reference, and so you have to match the timing on the audio pretty specifically. So we're looking at those waveforms to make sure that they match up. But the performance and then the lip flaps were then animated in English. So that when you play Final Fantasy 15 with the English language on, you see the mouths moving, which is just a mouth chart that they create.
That after,
Yeah. And there's a program now that does it, that gives you the rough estimate, makes the mouths move compared to what the phonetics are. And then someone goes back in and fine tunes it to make it really good.
And for video, Keythe, what about for video games? Is it mostly something they give you the lines, you do it at home, and then they do whatever they want with it? Or how do they?
Once again, if there was, I joke about this all the time, like every single video game I've ever worked on is reinventing the wheel. It's not like TV or film production, which we get so used to, where there's pre-production, there's production, there's post, and we know how it works. In video games, they are animating, mocap is happening, voiceover is happening. Sometimes the stuff gets animated to voiceover. Sometimes if you're a soldier on the battlefield, we won't see your lips move, so we can do it from home. But other stuff, we've already animated it, and so we want you to match and take a look at what we've seen and get in there and fill that in. Sometimes you're overdubbing someone who's worked on the mocap stage. A lot of times the mocap actors will pantomime a scene that you've already recorded. So we record the actor first, they put that all together, they send it to France or Poland or anywhere, and then the actors sort of mime it out, and then they just throw the mouth in. So there's a million different ways that they do it, but it all comes back to the same thing. It all comes back to, where am I, who am I talking to, what do I want, states and stakes.
Right.
It's all
thank
acting.
you so much. I had no clue. That was, now I know. Thank you.
It's a big world out there, but the techniques are all the same. And that idea of coming back to the things we do as actors, the technique stuff, dubbing is, that's a challenge when you're trying to make English fit with mouths that are moving in another language. That's a whole other skill that I have nothing but huge respect for.
Yeah. And I think it really is, the way we approach everything at the dojo is like, how do you take the expertise that you have in whatever expertise you have and bring it to this medium? And so you're just articulating, I see this is a different medium. How do I adjust to what this medium requires? So, and Patty, we're me and some of the other dojo senseis are going to be in Atlanta for VOA, Voiceover Atlanta, at the end of the month. So you should come. You should come. Are you going to be there, Dan? Are you going to be in a VOA?
I'll be here. Yeah, I just kind of got here. That is so cool, Tish. I would love to do that.
Check it out. Voiceover Atlanta. It's the last one in this incarnation. Are you going to be there, Dan?
Nope.
Not
going to be there.
Not going to be there. How about you, Keythe?
I will not be there this time around.
Excellent. Yes. So, well, hopefully we'll live to tell. But I think we'll have your email. So let's.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Oh, cool. And everybody else, if you're going to be at VoiceOver Atlanta, I think you can join VoiceOver Atlanta virtually as well. It's worthwhile. A lot of good resources. It's at the end of March. So. Yeah. Do you have time for another question, Jeffrey? And Keythe and Dan, do you have time for another question?
I'll be here.
Yeah, I got a couple of minutes.
I'd like to get I'd like to re-invite Eric back into the room for his audio engineer question.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's rejoining right now. Talk about timing. like an official re-invite. All righty. And hi, Eric. I see you're coming right back in. We just called on you for your auto engineer question. If you'd like to hop in and join us for that.
Oh, talk about timing. Computer crashes. Had to join.
Timing is everything.
Yeah, totally. The question I had is from an audio engineering standpoint or post-production standpoint, what is that mistake that a lot of actors are making? And A, how can they avoid that? And B, what's making it harder for you or making it easier for you, or what can, tips, tricks, etc.
Yeah, well, that's pretty simple. I mean, I have a lot of standard answers for that question. One is, don't go to YouTube and Google to find the answers. Talk to people who actually know what they're doing, which is not a lot. If you talk to recording engineers who are professional engineers working in big studios, they're not the people to ask, because they have a way of looking at it that is, from the perspective of, a $250,000 studio that is totally acoustically neutral and sterile. They don't think about the fact that you're in your closet or recording somewhere that is very, very different from the environment in which they record. And what you do in your environment is very specific to you. And every particular studio needs to be really designed to work for you and sound the way it's supposed to sound like with what you have and the limitations you have there. The biggest mistake I think people make is that they rely on technology to make them sound great. The idea of a home voiceover studio is not to sound great. If you're a good voice actor, you sound great because you're a good voice actor. The idea is to sound like you and capturing you as you exist, without processing, without noise reduction, without EQ and all these other things. Now, there's a lot of guys out there that'll talk about, well, I can do I won't mention any names because he's a good friend of mine, putting stacks on there, like, oh, I can adjust your audio to make you sound like this. That's intellectually dishonest as far as I'm concerned. You are supposed to capture you as you exist, which means the basics that I always teach. The acoustics of the room you're in. Is there noise coming in from the outside? Is it reflective? Do you sound like you're in a tube? Those sorts of things. And there's a lot of different techniques to get that right. Second is proper mic technique. Too many people have their mic up, right side up, blocking their copy, and they're constantly making plosives and talking right into the microphone like that. There's proper mic technique, and you've got to learn that. And the big mistake people make is, my favorite is, why does it sound so muffled? You're talking into the side of the mic. Make sure you're talking into the logo side of the mic, and have it being in the right distance, understanding what the sweet spot is in your particular acoustical situation, because every room is different and every voice is different. Along with that is one that I'm really starting to emphasize a lot, is people tend to over project. They see a microphone and they think they have to talk louder. Not the case. These are good studio condenser microphones, and they will capture you as you exist, like you're talking to another person. Voiceover is a one-to-one conversation for the most part, and you don't want to talk like you're talking to the little deaf lady in the back row or talking to 1,000 people at once. Now, while in reality, if you're doing a commercial, that may be the case, but it's still an intimate one-to-one conversation with somebody. And you've got to remember that. As Keythe said at the top, who are you talking to, where you're talking to them, why are you talking to them, what are you talking to them about, and when are you talking to them? That sort of thing. What is this conversation you're having? So you want to be able to have this thing capture you the way those other people would hear you. And we don't talk half an inch from people's eardrums. We're usually about this far away, and that's what these microphones are designed for. If you over project, the acoustics of the room you're in suddenly become very apparent. So in order to even, improve your acoustics even more, use your indoor voice. And number 3 is setting proper levels. I have never seen hundreds of thousands of people not understand this concept at all. Like when we were in radio, we used this guy, the old VU meter, and people just don't understand. There's a very specific way that about the right level. To make it real simple, depending on the meter that you have, depending on the software you have, always in the green, always in the yellow, with an occasional, if you're using like, Audacity, a flash, into the orange, but not into the red. But if you're just in the green, you're too lean. If you're in the yellow, you need to be a little more mellow. But it not just in the green. You want to make it loud enough. That does a number of things. One, it overpowers any background noise. Number 2, that's how people hear you. And that's what the engineer wants. They want a clean, properly modulated mono file of what you sound like in the environment you're in, as long as the environment you're in has the proper acoustical treatment, so it's non-reflective and there's no sound coming in. The mistakes that people make are that they overthink it and they listen to engineers who say, oh yeah, you have to have a DBX 286A, and you got to have this and you got to have that, and RX7, so you can clean up all your mouth clicks and all these other things. Everything you do to record is physical. It's a physical environment. It's physical technique that makes your audio sound the way it's supposed to sound like, and not all the technology. I'm not saying don't use it, but don't use stuff because you have it. Use it because you understand what it does, how it does it, and what you do to manipulate it. Does that all make sense, or am I getting too complicated here?
I think it covers a lot of bases. One metaphor that I like to use is, ideally you want your sound to be like if you had a face that you're just beautiful and glowing with no makeup, because you eat well and you hydrate and you go out in the sun just a little bit. So you want your sound to be beautiful and radiant without any makeup, or maybe a little dab of foundation if you needed that. But you don't want to send something that is your face with Tammy Faye Baker makeup on, because then the engineer can't do anything. The engineer, you are the face, the makeup, the engineer is the makeup artist. They'll do what they do to take what you have and create what needs to happen.
Exactly.
So
that's your job.
That's ideal, right? And or I was just thinking of those TikTok filters, right? Wow, I look like a supermodel. Like, no, you don't. So yeah, well, hopefully that's helpful. And and I think the other thing that just occurred to me, Dan, in listening, and listening again and again, that's why listening to VOBS is great, because this is not something that you're supposed to know. If you're not an audio engineer, you're not supposed to know this. Why should you know what levels are and stuff like that? So then you just keep on exploring, playing the game, editing your own stuff, and understanding the concepts in their simplest form. But you're talking about mic technique. It makes me think, I'm a horsewoman. From the first time you deal with a horse, someone tells you, this is the way we do it. We lead the horse from the left, and this is the way you do it. And if you forget and you lead it from the wrong side, the horse is going to be like, what the hell are you doing? Your trainer is going to be, what the hell are you doing? Right. So this is how we do it. And then you learn those things, and it's just like what you do. So it is a learning curve. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I think one of the most relaxing things, Dan, is it's not about how good you sound, it's that you don't sound bad. Like, oh, okay, that's relaxing, right? So yeah, and there's always someone you can, and this goes back to understanding enough that you can ask the questions, and there's always someone who can help you with the answer. And don't think because you're starting out new that there aren't people like me who've been doing it for a bunch of years, that particularly during the pandemic, you know, that there's people who came up when we didn't have to know nothing about driving the car. We just got in and were driven, you know, we just came and we spoke, and that was all it was. You didn't have to touch anything. You didn't have to do anything. And now you do. But there's a lot of people who have, you know, are on the same learning curve, or it's not their thing. But then there's super smart people like Dan who it is their thing, and then you just become friends with them and you ask them questions. So it's cool. Yeah. But you do need to know how to drive your own car. You do need to have your own vehicle and know how to drive it at least a little bit. So yeah. Well, this has been fantastic, guys. Dan, Keythe, thank you so much for your time. Jeffrey, thank you for keeping everything running smoothly. Everybody, thanks for being here, especially for the extra time. Hope to see you at the party. If you can come to the Catalyst thing tonight, that's great. And we do this the first Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m. PT. So come with your questions and we'll share whatever answers occur to us. So excellent. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Toodaloo.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.